What is the most inappropriate time where you just couldn't hold back your laughter? I had to tell my granny that an old friend of hers had died. The friend had kind of an unusual name, like Leonora Relmira Falkenbacher or something like that. Just an outlandish name. I was 13 at the time and had never had to break that kind of news to anyone before. I went into the kitchen, sat down at the table where she was, took a deep breath and said, "Granny, Mom just called and said Leonora Relmira Falkenbacher passed away," and immediately cracked up. The laughter exploded out of me. I clapped my hand over my mouth, but it was one of those times that the harder I tried not to laugh, the worse it got. Thank God, my granny started laughing. We laughed for 10 or 15 minutes. One of us would start to wind down, look at the other one, and bust up again. Eventually we calmed down and I apologized. She said it was okay, that her friend had a great sense of humor, and would have appreciated laughter over tears any day. I was at a dinner and there was a motivational speaker. Guy rolls up in a wheelchair. My friend leaned over and said I thought we weren't having vegetables until dinner. It was completely silent, and I lost it. My auntie's funeral. My sister and I sitting behind our great uncle who was in a wheelchair and had dementia. My mom, her sister and cousins, aka the man in the wheelchair's daughter and nieces, got up to read prayers. My uncle says loudly to his wife next to him, "Janet, who the fuck are these girls?" And we start giggling, and she tried to shush him. That was followed by, "No seriously, do you know these girls?" And she quietly tries to explain who's who. She gets to his niece Jacinta, and he says, "You can't expect me to believe that fat woman is our Jacinta." Jesus, Janet, she's huge. We were in near hysterics at this point. No one else was amused. Least of all Jacinta. We were listening to everyone's tell me a story speech in speech class. The whole day, all the speeches were pretty funny, or at least light-hearted. Then, the next girl that gave her speech started out in a light-hearted tone, and I was expecting a joke at the end. The speech was about their family vacation in which they get separated from their aunt. The speech ended with the line, "We eventually found her after the third day, in a dumpster. She had been raped and murdered." Saw a prissy 40-something princess walk into a restaurant and completely slipped on her fashionable, but zero function, shoes and fell like a sack of lead. It honestly looked like she tried to wipe her ass with her elbow. I wish I could say I was 12 at the time, but this was only about 3 months ago. I'm 42. Back when I was about 12 or so, my friend's mom's boyfriend was really into bicycle racing. He got some tickets to an event in the city from another cycling friend of his. There were multiple events being held that day, one of which was a regional Special Olympics charity event or something. Anyway, we are sitting in the stands at this big track, near the first turn. The track had been reformatted from the original circle, to have more turns and stuff, so the first turn was marked out by lines along the ground, a giant wall of hay bales with big ass orange arrows on it pointing left. So the Special Olympics race starts. The racers have a bit of room to start off, so the pack of about 30 people stretches out as some gain speed and some lag behind, etc. Except, when the guy out in front gets to the first turn that we were sitting at, instead of turning, like at all, he keeps going, and slams full speed right into the wall of hay bales. So me and my friend, remember, 12 years old, start cracking up a bit, but it was nothing super serious, especially since everyone else reacted a bit too. That was until the next bit happened. So the guy in second place comes up to the turn, and he also slams full speed into the wall of hay bales. And then the guy in third place, and fourth, and fifth, etc. Until 15 or 20 Special Olympics cyclers are all piled up in a massive crash, and their handlers and event staff are all trying to get in there and sort it out. Once that happened, even the mom's boyfriend was laughing hysterically right along with us. We were getting the death stare from 90% of the people in the stands. We just got up and went home after that. One day I was driving back from bowling with one of my mates. It was silent, and he just comes out with, "I thought I had found a lump on my balls." He was dead serious, and I burst out laughing. He still talks about how much of a shit bloke I am. My Mandarin teacher's voice cracks all the time when she tells us to start class. Sha and Ken. Also, the other day we were role playing her words, not mine, that she was my waiter at a restaurant. She looked me dead in the face and asked for my order, Zian Sheng, Niyao Shen. It was so violent and unexpected that I just busted out laughing in her face. Played it off like my friend told me a joke and she wasn't even bothered. It's hilarious. Also, her pronunciation of English words. Sweet potato, sword perdida persimmon, person, and the list goes on and on. She's really a nice lady, can't emphasize this enough, and English is a second language, so I shouldn't laugh, but damn if that shit ain't hilarious. Me and a couple of friends went to this low budget circus act in our small town when we were in our mid-teens. This one act, this woman had trained a seal to walk up a ramp and down the other side. As the seal reached the top, this setup decided to collapse, causing the seal to fall on top of this woman. All three of us just lost it at this point. She was fine, but I thought the crowd was going to lynch us. I was the only Westerner at a big award ceremony in China. I had to wait whilst name was read of award recipient and shake their hand. Was doing fine until it was announced that Fanny Pong had won an award. I saw a small child, 3 years old at the most, chasing his mom near a bus stop, running after her giggling. Then all of a sudden smack, the kid ran straight into the bus stop glass and fell down crying. Extra story. Some friends and I went to go see The Day After Tomorrow. There's a scene where the hospital has no power left. There is only a few nurses and a dying boy left. From what I remember, we'll call the boy to me and they are wondering what they will need to do. The situation is hopeless, sad scene. Quiet theater. I lean over to my friend and whisper, we are going to have to eat to me. He struggled to hold back his laughter. My best friend Joey passed away in 08, and I sang a song and spoke at his funeral. His pastor said a few words before it was my turn to speak, and he told a story about my friend. When my friend was 13, his stepmom had come home from work. She found Joey in the kitchen crying and very upset. When she asked him what was wrong, he went on to tell the story of how their dog kept barking, and when he went out to check on him, he found a huge snake near the dog pen. He ran in to get his pellet gun to shoot the snake, but when he tried to shoot it, the dog jumped in front of him, and he had accidentally shot the dog. The pastor told this story as an example of Joey's love and sensitivity. Everyone cried. Then it was my turn to speak. I should mention that his stepmother and I have never gotten along, and she blamed me for every bit of trouble Joey ever got into. As I started to speak, I contemplated not saying what I was about to say, but I knew Joey would have loved it. So I started by saying, one of my favorite stories about Joey was when we were in 8th grade and he called me freaking out because his dog kept barking while he was trying to take a nap and wouldn't shut up, so in a sleepy stupor, he grabbed his pellet gun and shot his dog in the leg, not thinking it would actually hurt him, just shut him up. Keep in mind he was only 13, but when he realized that he had actually hurt the dog, he was scared to death that his stepmom, evil bitch, would be pissed and ground him for a month. So I told him, before your stepmom comes home, put a little bit of soap in your eyes, we were 13, and pretend to cry. Then tell her you were saving him from an evil poisonous snake and accidentally you shot him. Then I giggled. Everyone's mouth dropped in horror. I stood there at the podium in front of over 500 people, including his stepmom. I could feel my face turn hot, and I got a little dizzy. Thank God one of our friends yelled out, "That's our Joey," and everyone started laughing. Except for his stepmom. I hate that bitch. At a military anti-sexual assault presentation, which was being put on by some traveling comedian type show, was mildly amusing. During a skit, a guy was trying to pressure this girl into, and her dad started coming home, so the guy exclaimed, "Oh no, your dad's coming, I better take the back door." Lost it. Wasn't me myself, but a friend of a friend. 3 guys were sitting in a shed on a cold winter's day and they decided that they would make a fire. They also thought that it was a good idea to start sniffing fumes from a propane bottle, the type for Barbies. Unfortunately, while passing the propane bottle onto his mate, he and the propane bottle fell into the fire. The other 2 bolted from the shed as fast as they could, leaving their mate behind. As you would expect, the propane bottle exploded and killed the guy who was left behind. This is where a friend of a friend comes in. He is a cop, and he had the unfortunate task of telling the parents of the dead man what happened. He explained to the mother and father exactly what had happened, and they'd come to the conclusion that it was an unfortunate accident and no one would be charged with an offense. At this point the mother turned to the father and said, "So should we get him cremated?" The police officer had to try his absolute hardest to not laugh in this situation, as there was no way to cremate the body because it was vaporized in the explosion. Unfortunately he let out a few sniggers and had to shoulder them off as coughing. To this day my friend and this police officer tell everyone they can about what happened that day. P.S. Cops use humor to deal with terrible situations. I work as a software developer and my mate had to develop a CMS module, content management, where customers could upload descriptions, images, etc. Naturally we tested the image upload function with some filth we found on 4chan. I remember in particular 4 images we uploaded to test: an image rotator, a dog with a t-shirt on, a girl with her breasts out, a bloke having a wank, and an old woman having a poo. One day my boss was suddenly really angry as these images, having been saved on our hard drives, found their way up to a server. When I asked him what they were, and he came out with boobs, wanking, shooting in a really serious voice, I completely lost it and started making snorting noises trying to contain myself. I was visiting friends in St. Louis. We had been out drinking the night before and decided to see a movie. The closest movie theater was in the local mall, so we decide to get some food first and then catch the movie. We get to the mall, my friends start getting food and I go to the map right outside the food court to see where the theater is. I'm hungover, but in a 21-year-old energetic kind of way, and as I'm walking to the map the crowd parts. That's when I see it. Or rather, them. 2 midgets. 2 honest to god midgets are looking at the map that I want to use to check where the theater is. And it's not like it was a regular "oh hey, these are just 2 people checking where something is" kind of moment. The crowd I was walking through parted, revealing these 2 tiny little people up on their tiptoes trying to point things out to each other on the map. In my incredibly hungover state, with no filter in place, I burst out laughing. They looked at me. They looked right at me and gave me the dirtiest of looks that I richly deserved. But seeing that much hate coming from 4 tiny little eyes only made me laugh more. I felt like an ass. Years later I ended up in a bar telling a joke about midgets, where the punchline was, "What do you do to a midget? You toss it." Only to have my friend's face sink and look behind me. Another midget had snuck up while I was telling my story and was standing right behind me when I delivered the punchline. If there is such a place as midget hell, I deserve to go there. Well, if I can get through the door anyway. Was watching Captain Phillips last night with a couple mates. Near the ending there was a scene where Tom Hanks is screaming and crying and everyone's emotional in the cinema, and I just turn to my mate and say Tom Hanks is actually taking a shit, and we both burst out laughing. It was probably the worst time to laugh. We were also high, so that made it worse. A kid at my high school offed himself and everyone was told in the morning. Lunch comes around and everyone was somber to the point of practically no talking. My friend comes in late, sees everyone not talking and says, "Geez, who died?" Cue angry stares from everyone, and I can't help but laugh. Not sure who got more glares in the end. At my grandma's funeral, she used to do some acting and wanted one of her old actor friends to sing at her funeral because she thought his voice was so beautiful. So we are all sitting there crying and upset, and her friend begins to sing. His voice had way too much vibrato. It wasn't a horrible voice, but damn, that vibrato was over the top. We all quickly went from crying to sniggering, trying hard to hold back our laughter. Lunchtime in middle school. Someone was making an announcement, so the whole cafe was quiet. Out of nowhere this special kid let out a really loud ee sound. My whole table started laughing. At a funeral sitting next to my best friend. He is wearing a super nice suit. He crosses his legs and I look over, and he is wearing these lycra ankle socks one would wear when bicycling. I don't know why, but it just struck me as the most hilarious thing I ever saw, and I absolutely lost it. At my friend's sister's funeral, his sister's best friend was giving a speech. She said something like, "Lyra, David and I used to hang out all the time. We made a great threesome." And I burst out laughing. Was slightly awkward, but I didn't care. My friend loves me for it, and so do his parents, I think. It was a really tough time and I think the lightheartedness of the inappropriate laughter helped. At a funeral, I was paying respect to my recently deceased GF's grandmother with her at my side. I got in front on the coffin. I looked at the deceased and noticed her face is all stretched up in kind of a funny way and the makeup was totally awful. I'm now bursting out laughing, while at the same time trying to control it by biting my lips pretty hard, resulting in me making a very disturbed face right in front of everyone at the funeral home.